Two people walk into the same Brazilian bank in the same month and ask for the same personal loan. One walks out paying 28% a year. The other walks out paying 127. Same bank, same month, same central bank data set. And the difference between them is not credit score, it is not income, and it is not collateral. The difference is one single question. Does the money come out of the paycheck before it ever reaches the borrower? That is the entire gap. And I only went looking at any of this because somebody in this comment section asked me a question I answered wrong the first time. Quick thing before we dig in. We have got a Discord now, the Motion Room, and there is a channel in there called Early Access, where videos land before they go public. Come grab it, make it yours. And the newsletter is one email every Friday. Both links are in the description. All right. So this one comes from Nathan, and if you spend any time in the comments here, you know him. 6 years in this space, 35 years a carpenter, and the man reads central bank documentation for fun. He drops this on the Ripple Mint video. He had run across PACT and said it brought about $2 billion in real-world assets with it, that it was, and these are his words, payroll-ish, and that when he ran it past Grok, what came back was that PACT is complementary to Zebec. And his $2 billion is basically right, by the way. That figure traces to Aptos Foundation's own write-ups. Worth knowing, they have published the same number twice, 6 months apart, unchanged. And I answered him, and I got it wrong. I read him as saying PACT was built on Zebec's chain, and I very confidently corrected something the man never actually said. He came back, completely politely, and told me I was comparing PACT and Zebec both as payroll, not the chains. I already knew PACT was on Aptos. He was right. And the comparison he was actually making is the sharper one. So let us go do it properly. So what is PACT? And first, a warning, because there are at least 5 separate projects using that name. The one we're talking about is PACT Foundation. Everything else is somebody else. And here is the part I genuinely did not expect. PACT started life as a charity. In 2020, a small team in Portugal launched something called Impact Market on the Celo blockchain. Unconditional basic income for vulnerable communities. Microloans for people the banking system had written off entirely. That was the whole mission. Then in June of 2024, the token holders voted to adopt PACT Foundation as the legal wrapper for Impact Market DAO. 19 votes cast. That is the handover. And by February 2025, the protocol had moved to Aptos, after what the announcement calls 9 months of incubation with the Aptos Foundation. Now, 3 weeks ago, on the 14th of July, Tether led a $7 million Series A into PACT Labs. And in that release, Paulo Ardoino said something I have not been able to stop thinking about. He said, the demand for dollar settlement is a wages story. That is the head of the biggest stablecoin on earth saying the killer app is payday. And that is the pivot. And I can date it almost to the week. Because I went and pulled up the Wayback Machine. All the way through the 7th of March this year, PACT's own homepage described itself as decentralized microfinance for global empowerment. On that version of the page, the word payroll appears 0 times. On the page today, 12. So somewhere between March and now, bracketing that Tether round, PACT changed what it tells the world it is, which made me want to look at the actual code. So I pulled PACT's move package straight off an Aptos mainnet node. 42 modules deployed on chain, and listen to what they are called. Loan book, borrowing base engine, interest waterfall, risk score manager, and one called XIRR, which is a fund accounting function for internal rate of return. Number of modules with payroll or wages or salary or earned wage access anywhere in the name? 0. Not one of the 42. And I do not say that as a gotcha, because it explains the business better than the marketing does. PACT is not a payroll company that added credit. It is a credit company that has pointed its machinery at payroll. And once you see it that way, it clicks, because earned wage access is a lending problem wearing a payroll costume. When a worker draws their pay early, somebody is fronting that money against a receivable. And borrowing base engines and payment waterfalls are exactly what you would build to finance a receivable. PACT's own page says it out loud. Trapped balance sheet, they write, converts into tokenized receivables. Okay, so then Zebec. And I did a full breakdown on Zebec back in May, so I am not redoing the origin story. What I want is the one mechanical question that actually decides Nathan's comparison. Does Zebec ever front money? And I found about the cleanest possible way to answer it. Back in April, Zebec applied for a grant to build streaming payroll on the Canton network. And that application is sitting right there in their own GitHub. So I searched it. For the word credit, 0. Loan, 0. Lend, advance, float, receivable, borrow, underwrite, all 0. 12 different credit words in the most detailed technical document Zebec has ever published, and not one of them appears. What does appear is this. The contract locks the employer's stablecoin up front, and then, under edge cases, quote, insufficient balance. The contract validates the sender has sufficient funds before initializing any stream, rejecting transactions where the balance falls below the stream amount plus fees. And there is your answer. Zebec moves money the employer already has. It cannot front $1, and it was never designed to. And I want to be clear because this matters. That is a design choice, not a flaw. Their own documentation pitches it as the entire point. If your pay accrues to you continuously, you never need a payday loan in the first place. That is a coherent, honestly quite humane thesis. It is just not a credit product. So they are different machines. One is a pipe, one is a balance sheet. Case closed. Except no, because Nathan's instinct that a payroll rail and payroll credit belong together is not just right. It describes one of the largest consumer credit markets on this planet, and it has been running for decades. Brazil. They call it crédito consignado, payroll deducted credit. The lender gets paid straight out of your paycheck before the money ever reaches you. And the Brazilian central bank publishes the whole thing every month in a free public API. So I pulled it myself. And I got it wrong on the first pass because I guessed which series meant what. So I stopped guessing and proved it by checking the parts add up to the published total. When that reconciled to the last decimal, I knew I had the right numbers. So, June of this year, a personal loan in Brazil that is not payroll deducted runs at about 127% a year, and roughly 11% of it goes bad. The same kind of loan, payroll deducted, runs at about 28%, and roughly 3% goes bad. Same country, same month, same regulators data set. A 99-point gap in the price of credit, and about 3 times less default. And go one rung further down. Loans deducted from a state pension, money that literally cannot stop arriving, default at under 2%. And here's the number that made me sit back. This is not some niche product over there. Payroll deducted lending is about 2/3 of Brazil's entire personal credit market. That is just how Brazil does consumer credit. And if you want proof that it is the mechanism doing that work and not just better borrowers, Kenya ran the experiment for us. Not on purpose, but they ran it. Kenyan savings and credit cooperatives lend against payroll through what they call checkoff, and their regulator publishes a supervision report every year. So I pulled the 2024 one, and here's the finding. One group of those cooperatives watched their bad loan ratio go from 19% down to just under 10% in a single year. And the regulator explains why, in its own words. They were required to process members' salaries through their own accounts, so as to have a first charge on the same, rather than wait for the employers to make the deductions and remit. Sit with that for a second. Nothing changed about the borrowers. Nothing changed about the loans. What changed is where in the flow of money the lender's claim was sitting, and default halved. And there is a cleaner one still. Same country, same year, same kind of employer, public universities. The cooperatives running that first charge model, bad loans at 0.19%. The ones not running it, nearly 7%. And then, just before Christmas, the United States wrote the same idea into regulation. The CFPB issued an advisory opinion, effective December 23rd, and the finding is right there in the heading. Covered earned wage access is not credit, because when the money comes back through the payroll process, rather than by reaching into the worker's bank account afterwards, in their words, the consumer makes no deferred payment. So the very mechanism that makes payroll lending cheap in Brazil is the mechanism that makes it stop being lending at all in America. So, are PACT and Zebec complementary? Honest answer, Nathan? Not really. Not these two. They do not touch. Different chains, different stablecoins, no shared product, no integration anywhere. And I went looking for one specifically because your instinct deserved a real search rather than a shrug. And the argument runs out of road because the version that says PACT brings the credit and Zebec brings the payroll rail falls apart the moment you notice PACT already brought its own rail. They partnered with Payactiv, who arguably invented earned wage access in America, and with Toku, who handle payroll compliance across 100+ countries. So PACT does not need Zebec. If anything, they are walking toward the same doorway from opposite sides. But here is the part I really want you to hear. The shape you were pointing at is real. It is just bigger than either of these companies. Because everything Brazil and Kenya and the CFPB just showed us says the same thing. The magic in payroll lending is not the payroll. It is the seniority. It is being paid before the worker is paid and staying paid when that worker changes jobs. And that is the thing nobody on chain has actually built yet. Zebec has beautiful plumbing and no claim on what flows through it. PACT has a real balance sheet and depends on somebody else's plumbing to collect. Whoever does build it, an enforceable, portable claim on a paycheck, is not building a crypto product. They are building the thing that turns 127% into 28%, and you sketch the outline of it from a comment section. So let me leave you something you can go and check yourself today for free. PACT has a governance vote open right now. It is called PIP-003, and it is the first and only proposal their on-chain governance has ever run. I pulled the live tally off Aptos while making this. 0 votes against, and about 80% of the way to quorum. It closes in 3 days, and worth flagging since it is on your screen. The portal says the 7th. The chain's own clock says just after 1 UTC on the 8th. Either way, days. And there is material inside it the summary does not mention. PACT's first institutional user at scale is a firm called Berkeley Square Finance, running non-performing asset portfolios out of India. And earned wage access gets priced, right there in the text, at 10 basis points. Go read it before it closes. And here is what makes it matter. With 0 votes against, it is still sitting at only about 80% of the quorum it needs. So as things stand right now, it does not pass. Not because anybody opposed it, but because not enough people turned up. Nathan, thank you. This one is yours. I will see you in the next one.